Yeah, hi, this is Tuhin Sinha. Hi, this is Tuhin Sinha, and I'm here with you on to moderate a discussion between Piyush and followers of BJP. To briefly tell you about India 272 plus dialogues, India 272 plus volunteering program is pleased to announce a second in its series of India 272 plus dialogues on 13th Jan 2014 with a digital interaction between Shri Piyush Goyal, National Treasurer of the BJP and member of Rajya Sabha, and Mission 272 plus community overseas in the USA and elsewhere across the globe. India 272 Plus Dialogues was launched recently as a series of events that would be to bring the Mission 272 Plus community closer to the leaders of the BJP. In the inaugural event on the 9th of Jan, Shri Narendra Modi is personally interacted with Mission 272 Plus volunteers in New Delhi. As a part of the global outreach for BJP's Mission 272 Plus, this digital interaction was planned to engage the overseas Indian community that would like to see Shri Narendra Modi as India's next Prime Minister. India 272 Plus as a platform has grown to engage lakhs of volunteers through its website and through its social media channels on Twitter and Facebook. Today, India 272 Plus is the primary campaign destination for all Mission 272 Plus volunteers to keep abreast of the latest on the campaign and to contribute to the campaign through both online and on-ground activities. Through this digital interaction with Shri Piyush Goyal, all overseas Indians who are keen to get integrated with Mission 272 Plus campaign can get their questions answered on ways in which they can contribute and make their voices, opinions heard. Shri Piyush Goyal, who also heads BJP's Information and Communication Committee, will share details of the various initiatives that have been planned and will offer insights on how the overseas Indians can become a part of this mission to ensure that BJP gets 272 plus majority in the next Lok Sabha elections to be held during 2014. Wish Mission 272 plus volunteers the very best as we look forward to our enthusiastic participation in India 272 plus dialogues with Shri Narendra Modi and now with Shri Piyush Goyal. Piyush Goyal does not need an introduction. He is currently the Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha and National Treasurer of the Bharatiya Janata Party, the principal opposition party in India. He also heads BJP's Information Communication Campaign Committee that oversees all outreach efforts of the party via web, mobile and social media. So please welcome Shri Piyush Goyal. Piyush, would first talk about the changing scenario today, because in the last 2 months, a lot of things have happened in the country. 2 months ago, we were very, it was completely Modi versus the UPA fight, in which Modi ji was way, way ahead. He still is, but right now we've got somebody who is acting as a spoiler. And thanks to the media hype, thanks to all the media hype that the third force has been getting, a lot of people have been asking for fresh interactions and fresh strategies. So Piyush is first going to talk to you for 5 or 7 minutes, and probably or possibly more, and he's going to talk about the changed political scenario and guide you all.
Thank you very much, Tuhin. A very good evening to all our friends in the US who have joined us today on this India 272 dialogue. A very good morning to some of the friends who may have joined from India. As you are aware, Tuhin maybe is a very renowned author. He has written some very good books. He has very recently also authored a book with Shri Nitin Gadkari ji, our former president, on India Inspires. It's a very inspirational book where he's talked about some of the initiatives that Mr. Gadkari did, both as party president and before that in his earlier avatar as a minister in the government. Friends, we are meeting at a time when we have just concluded some time back 4 assembly elections to Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and Delhi. Of course, you are all aware that the Bharatiya Janata Party emerged the largest party in all 4 states, winning nearly 80% of the seats in Rajasthan, a clear 2/3 majority in Madhya Pradesh, for the third time, which by itself is kind of a record to win two-thirds of the seats third time around. We had an absolute majority in Chhattisgarh, again for the third time, a state which traditionally has never voted so strongly three times in a row, or a region which has never voted so strongly three times in a row for one party. In Delhi, we did emerge as the single largest party, but as we are all concerned about today, and Tuhin mentioned briefly in his introduction, we saw the emergence of a new political party which started as a movement but is today in government in Delhi, for which we must compliment them, and we cannot take away from them the credit for having been able to rouse the people in their active fight against corruption, particularly corruption at the lower end of the bureaucratic setup. And I think in their anger against the Congress, in their desire to throw out the Congress in Delhi, they certainly scored a very good result. They got 28 of the 70 seats that went to polls in Delhi, and today are in government, ironically, with the support of the very Congress which the people wanted to throw out of government in Delhi, and against which there was anger amongst the citizens of Delhi. Well, that's the irony of politics, and in that respect, you have seen the transformation of a movement against corruption to a real-life political party which has had to start with its first foray into politics at the back of a compromise. Nevertheless, we have today a government in Delhi headed by them, and we have several governments in many states headed by the BJP. More particularly, the attractive part of this whole situation is that our Gujarat government, Mr. Modi has been elected three times around, Mr. Shivraj Singh Chauhan three times around, Mr. Raman Singh three times around, Mr. Manohar Parrikar, who probably has run one of the best governments Goa has ever seen in its history, is re-elected once again. Even though the last time around he had to leave office because of a quirk of fate that a section of the BJP, which had then run a coalition in Goa, had left. But this time, for the first time in the history of Goa, the people of Goa have elected the Bharatiya Janata Party with an absolute majority and have given a stable government to the state of Goa, which enables Mr. Parrikar to really bring in good governance, to bring in new reform, implement ideas which are game-changing for that small state of Goa itself. We of course run a government in Punjab, which has also been an unprecedented second term, which traditionally and historically Goa has never had. Goa has never given a party a second term. So another very milestone election we've seen in Punjab. We've never seen Punjab getting any second time around government for several years. And today we are in a situation where we are embarking on the national campaign for the general election sometime in April and May. Of course, soon after the Delhi result and a couple of very populist announcements for reducing power tariffs, for reducing the water bill, you suddenly found a part of the political discourse in India veering towards the Aam Aadmi Party. And very legitimately they are making a foray nationally and have probably identified many more urban centers and some rural centers where they are looking at contesting and taking the battle forward. Here I must pause to mention that the very important message that is emerging all across India is the complete decimation of the Congress party, a party which a few years ago was holding 435 seats out of 542 in Indian Parliament in 1984, a time when the Bharatiya Janata Party was down to 2 members of Parliament, has over the years gone down and under, and to the extent that today all opinion polls show that A, there is a leadership vacuum in the party. B, they are completely discredited because of the governance and the governments that they have run. C, corruption, price rise, the complete collapse of the economy are areas of concern for the people. 4, and mirage of a growth on the back of fiscal profligacy does not help, and just providing people temporary succor or providing them fish instead of jobs, providing them good lifestyles is what people want, not just temporary fish and no skills, no development, no jobs, is not something which is going to help earn votes. And that is being amply demonstrated with the widespread anger all across the nation against the Congress. We have a situation today where opinion polls seem to suggest that the Congress party may be down to double digits. And in this scenario, we have seen Mr. Modi emerge as the most popular leader all across the country. And his popularity ratings, even in several states in the south, far beat any estimates or any expectations that the best pollsters or best analysts ever had. Certainly, you are all asking questions about what will be the impact of the AAP or the Aam Aadmi Party in this election. The AAP, as I said, started as a movement, has no background, has no track record. And in that sense, there's a whiff of freshness about the AAP. I think it's good that we suddenly have somebody in the contest, because the Congress, having almost lost the will to even fight Mr. Modi, we saw in India a situation where Mr. Modi became a unipolar personality in this whole election. And you could see that the election didn't have a contest. Now, obviously, no election campaign ever runs with a one horse race. We have always seen an election contest veer around two political forces, and the people completely disenchanted with the Congress, in some places also may not have been very happy with the BJP, were looking for a third outlet. And in that respect, we have seen the fast emergence of the AAP, which has actually spiced up the contest. And we find that across India, there is this talk about what will be the impact of the AAP on the BJP or Mr. Modi's prospects. Let me tell you, today the nation is 34 lakh square kilometers. We are looking at a nation of 123 crore people. We are not looking at a small subset of a few urban centers of just Delhi, which is 30, 40, 50 square kilometers, where over a sustained period of a year, I think the AAP was able to campaign very effectively, demonstrate that the BJP and Congress did not have their leadership act in order, and probably gain some traction first in Delhi and now in some other urban centers. But you must appreciate that the BJP and the NDA led by the BJP is a national formulation with millions of people all across the country working day and night at the grassroots for Mr. Modi and for the campaign to bring in a good, stable government in the nation. In that respect, the AAP is far behind. You see a lot of media hype. You see the media has suddenly veered very largely towards the AAP, which for some, in some sense, is also quite obvious, because the media is not looking at only a single candidate or a unipolar election. It's certainly not going to help with their TRPs. It's not going to help with their viewership or readership if entire day all that they have to report is what is happening with the BJP or the Modi campaign. So in that respect, you will see a traction in the media, a hype in the media, where even the slightest move around the AAP is going to get a lot of media publicity. For example, the other day, the Times Group, the Times of India and the television channel Times Now, for an entire day hyped up a debate or an opinion poll which they conducted across 8 metro cities. I don't know how many of you are aware that that poll was carried out over 2015 respondents only. So 8 cities representing some 5% or 7% of India, and a poll of only 2,000 respondents. Now there is a catch even within those 2,000 respondents. The 2,000 respondents were selected only in the age group of 18 to 45. Within that, there were only the upper layer of society, which is categorized as SEC 1 and SEC 2. When you rank or categorize the Indian population amongst different segments of society, this was the upper crust of Indian society. So effectively, it was a poll carried out over the internet, which covered 5 or 7% of India, within which it covers about 60-65% of the voting population, and within which it covered only the upper crust, which brought it down effectively to a poll of less than 2% of the Indian population. So you saw a poll being hyped up very, very aggressively, saying that you have an upswing of interest in AAP and its leader, whereas it represented a poll taken in less than 2% of the voting population of India, and within that a sample size of only 2,000 respondents. Now, I mean, it may sound to you that, I'm just nitpicking on the details, but what happens is that if one was to select a very segmented part of India and do an opinion poll, it's something like if we do an opinion poll amongst only people in a set of society, which reflects largely an interest in the BJP or NDA, you may get completely skewed results also. So I think a lot of panic got created because of some of these very strategically moved polls or media reports, which I think we should not overestimate. In business, I often tell my friends, when we are bidding for a contract or filling in a tender, it's harmful to underestimate your opponent, but equally, if not more harmful, to overestimate your opponent. Strategically, it's best to know the reality, best to understand what's happening on the ground, and strategize correctly. So in that respect, I think some of the hype being created has been overestimated. I suggest we should not get very unperturbed or unnerved about what's happened. Having said that, it's very important to learn some lessons from what's happening in the country. As I said earlier, the lesson number 1 is we are going to have an election which is going to be very keenly fought, very keenly contested in different parts of the country by different opponents. The good part of it is now you have a unipolar person at the center, Mr. Narendra Modi and his party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, which we all represent, around which the election is going to be centered. So Mr. Modi and what he says and what he promises is going to be what the entire political spectrum is going to respond to. So you will find that every region, people are trying to get together somehow to defeat Mr. Modi. And in that respect, the national election, the central figure has become Mr. Modi, and you have forces in different parts of the country contesting against Mr. Modi. Congress itself seems to be reduced almost to a regional force. I try to put the numbers together, I don't even understand where they can possibly gain over the last election in even a single state in the country. I can't even understand how they will even cross the 3-figure mark going forward in this election. That's the kind of situation. And when we talk to congressmen, they say we have almost given up this election. We are now waiting for 2019 to take up Mr. Modi in the next election. We have a situation of regional forces in different parts of the country. And we have this new phenomenon, the AAP, in certain urban sectors, building up traction. It's a far long way to go. before it can talk of winning seats, but certainly it can play a spoiler in certain seats where the margin of victory may not be large enough. So you may have a situation that they will play a spoiler in several urban areas, in some places for the BJP, in some places for the Congress, in some places maybe for some other parties. And why do I say that? It's not as if every urban seat votes for one or the other of the coalitions or one or the other of the parties. You may have a particular seat where the BJP is very strong, but the Congress is so far behind that even if a spoiler comes in, it does not have an impact. And vice versa, there may be some seats where the Congress is very strong, where a spoiler does not have an impact. But there would be certain seats, both for the BJP and for the Congress, where margins of victory not being very large, you may find that if a spoiler picks up votes from one or the other candidate of the Congress or BJP, he can change the election result for one of the main principal parties. And in the process, maybe pick up a few seats. But we have yet to hear from the AAP what is their world vision of the economy. We have yet to hear from them what is the foreign policy, what is the policy on security, what are their views on controversial issues like Kashmir. And you saw one of their leaders, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, refer to a referendum or a plebiscite in Kashmir to decide whether the army should be stationed there to protect the interests of the people there and to save Kashmir from insurgency or foreign forces. I mean, we have a situation where the senior ideologue of the party is literally talking of breaking the country. We have other ideologues of the party giving out an economic vision which is completely far left. They are talking of nationalizing airports. They are talking of nationalizing power plants. They are putting out a new theory that all natural resources, spectrum, government lands, all of that should only be the property of the public sector, and they do not really value the involvement of the private sector or the private businesses in the growth of the country. I mean, I sometimes wonder whether their policies are pro-poor, pro the citizens of the India, or they want to institutionalize poverty. Are they looking to make everybody poor in the country and create a situation where it feels immoral to be successful? Are they breaking away the aspirations of India or young India in such a fashion that they want everybody to live in abject poverty or be dependent on the government for subsidies and for their next square meal? Ultimately, I think this election will be focused more on policy. People want to see ideas. People want to see vision. People are looking for a track record of good governance, a track record of successful growth, a track record of creating jobs, a track record of a government which runs honestly. And I think in all those respects, the BJP-led NDA at the center in 6 years and the state governments which we've led for several years have come out with excellent performance. We have been able to, in fact, and I'll answer it as we go forward with the questions, we have been able to provide India with a stable foundation in the 6 years that Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee led the NDA at the center from 98 to 2004. We have been able to bring before the people a government that really gave good governance, honest governance, which created 60 million jobs in a short span of 6 years, which took the economy from the depths of 4.5% growth to over 8.5% growth when we laid down office, which converted an economy of shortages into an economy of surpluses, which kept prices stable, brought down inflation from double digit to less than 4% when we laid down office. And we had before the people of India a very good government run in Gujarat, in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, all our governments which have given honest governments, which have rapidly expanded trade, manufacturing, agricultural sector, which have given jobs to the people. Infrastructure development has been one of the focus areas. You have 24/7 power. Very few states in the country, and most of the states are BJP led, be it Gujarat, be it Madhya Pradesh, be it Chhattisgarh, be it Goa. All our states promise and deliver on 24/7 power. Our states have had no corruption scams on any of our senior leaders. Our states have developed infrastructure. They have created massive growth in agricultural sector. I think a track record which is unbeatable, a leader in Mr. Narendra Modi, who is visionary, who has ideas for the future of India, who comes out as a person who's really focused on the administration, on good governance, and whose integrity is beyond compare in the national political scene. Person who has risen in the ranks, who has seen poverty firsthand, who has himself literally risen from the ground to emerge as the tallest leader in the country, and who is before the people of India today as a future leader who will, given a good chance, given a government with a good majority, will provide to the people of India a future, will work to fulfill the aspirations of a young India, and who has, with a track record in the past, delivered and assures the people of India will deliver given an opportunity. As he says, give me 10 years and I will give you a future. Thank you very much for your patience. I think I've laid out the context in which we'll discuss going forward, but I can only appeal to all our friends and well-wishers, both internationally and in India, to participate and to participate actively, to educate the people of India what is good for the nation, for their lives, for their future, to participate in this big campaign, not necessarily by traveling to India, but there are several ways in which you can participate, even while you are in your homes, in your businesses, in your cities, internationally. There is a lot of engagement that is possible with the electorate and with us in India, and I would urge all of you concerned Indians and persons of Indian origin to take an active interest in the next 90 days or 120 days to give India the future that it rightfully deserves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Piyush, for that inspiring talk. You managed to put a lot of things into perspective. Especially, I think that's a common perception which most people have, that AAP does not have a policy. What does it stand for? It doesn't stand for anything. I think blatant tokenism is all they have. They seem to be offering in the last 1 month, and the tokenism seems to be falling flat on them, because what happened in Delhi on Saturday, where a stampede could have well resulted in casualties during the Janata Darbar, would have completely called the bluff of the tokenism. So anyway, lots of questions coming in from people who are participating in the Google Hangout, as well as from people who have been volunteering on the 272 India 272 plus platform. We'll begin by taking a very basic question, which is from Dharmendra Kumar. For your reference, these are the questions. He says, how best can NRIs help BJP in campaigning, apart from making social media and phone calls? Is there a need to raise campaign funds from NRIs? How can NRIs contribute financially to the campaign?
Well, I think the NRIs can contribute in several ways, some of them also financially, but I think the bigger contribution of the NRIs and persons of Indian origin all over the world would be in terms of engagement. It's not only a question of social media and phone calls. For example, recently I believe some friends in the US have initiated a pledge. They have come out with a campaign where they are asking people to register and to pledge their support for Mr. Narendra Modi. There's a video link, which is, there's a link on a pledge which is available on the India 272 platform, which I would urge all of you to look up, to pledge your support for Mr. Modi as PM, and also to popularize amongst your friends all over the world to pledge their support for Mr. Modi. I think one of these days going forward, some of the leaders of this movement are going to fly down to India to submit that pledge to Mr. Modi and actually commit the support of this group of people. That would be the first level of engagement, and that would also help us get an idea of how many people are willing to volunteer or want to help Mr. Modi. As a second part of the campaign, we were looking at your interacting with your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, your colleagues in workplace or business, your class fellows from school and college in the good old days. There are so many people that each one of you can engage with, maybe through phone calls, maybe through engaging through WhatsApp or on Facebook. You could also write letters to them, explaining what attracts you towards Modi, what you feel about Modi, what you think India can do, what you think is possible in their own lives. If there was a good government, if there was an honest government, if there was a visionary government led by a leader like Mr. Modi. I think one big activity is engaging with your friends and relatives and known acquaintances back home in the villages of India, in the streets of India. There is a lot of people, you know them, out there. And people in India look up to the overseas Indians as success stories. After all, you have gone to a foreign land and you have made it successful. We aspire to improve our lives, and your stories over there are very inspirational in that respect. So I think when you will convey to the people back home your thoughts, your views about Mr. Modi, about the BJP, when you will engage with them, that can have a very powerful impact going forward. Of course, many persons of Indian origin have volunteered and have said they would like to come back home and volunteer to participate in the actual campaigning on the ground. We would welcome that also. Ideally, we would like you to go back to your villages, to your towns, to your neighborhoods, to your mohallas, and engage in the campaign on the ground in the areas of influence where you probably spent your childhood or you probably have family roots. That would be the best engagement. I mean, more important than let's say engagement in the offices or in the or only in the, let's say, back office. It's very important if all of you were to get onto the ground in your neighborhoods to talk to people and educate them about what could be a good future for them. That would be another way to actively engage in the campaign. You have asked about funds from NRIs. Tomorrow we are launching an online campaign where we'll be able to accept donations both through the net and through the mobile phones. That will be launched tomorrow in Delhi. And NRIs who are persons holding an Indian passport, that is Indian citizens only, can donate through that website, the bjp.org or india272.com. All our websites will be hosting the link which takes you to the donate page. You can donate if you are an Indian citizen. We'll of course require from you a copy of your Indian passport, and we'll require from you a letter stating that these donations are from your personal funds and not from your business. Provided you fulfill these two conditions, you can donate to the BJP and Mr. Modi financially also. Other than that, other overseas Indians who are not Indian citizens are not permitted to donate for the campaign. Well, you can donate through your time, through your effort, through your active participation. That is still very valuable.
Just to add to what Piyush just said, in fact, a concerned overseas Friends of BJP member has recently sent us a pledge, and we request all Friends of BJP members abroad to to kind of read it and to follow this. It reads, I am a concerned overseas Indian. I feel deeply for the welfare of my friends and family in India and wish to see a strong, secure, and prosperous India. I believe India's problems can only be resolved by an honest, capable, and visionary leader. Shri Narendra Modi has demonstrated this ability to deliver good governance and ensure the prosperity of each and every citizen in the state of Gujarat. He has achieved this through minimal government and maximum governance with implementation of multiple programs at a massive scale, leading to empowerment of people with productive jobs and economic fulfillment. I hence pledge my support to Shri Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister of India. So if you agree with it, please do adopt this pledge in the next 100 years and make sure the dream comes true. Piyush, the next question is from Manik Tyagi. And he says Namo has done awesome work in various areas, for example, Swagat, eGram, etc. But many people, including volunteers, don't know details about them. Does BJP plan to do something around this?
Thank you. I don't know how you are selecting because I see so many questions. And I'm really very happy that there are so many people who have chosen to engage on this India 272 dialogue. As Tuhin said, it's the second in a series. And going forward, we're going to have many more dialogues of such nature. Some suggestions I read were also to have a video hangout. We are delighted to have a video hangout, but I was advised that in a video hangout, at best, we could have 10 participants who could ask questions or who could be on the hangout personally, which is why we chose this format. We thought that way there could be much more engagement. But I'm happy to explore the possibility to have a combo. So going forward, maybe the next time around, we'll try to have a combination of a video hangout coupled with this. I'll have the technical team examine it. As regards the awesome work that Mr. Modi has done in India, very clearly that has been discussed, it has been in public discourse for a long time, but probably we need to relook at our communication strategy to be able to convey to the people that most of the things that are now being promised by the Congress or by the AAP or other parties are something that Mr. Modi has traditionally been doing. So for example, a helpline is something Gujarat had many years ago, which is now being tom-tommed as an innovative idea. The e-governance or Swagat that Gujarat initiated some 10 years ago has been a runaway success. You actually have a response to a citizen's problem in less than a day through the e-governance model that Mr. Modi had initiated 10 years ago. So Mr. Modi's work, whether it's in the area of encouraging manufacturing, whether it's his excellent success in agricultural growth, which is unparalleled in India, over 7% CAGR in agriculture, as against a national average of 2.5% for a decade, consistently for a decade, is something we've never seen anywhere in India before. Growth, double-digit growth for 10 years, CAGR of double-digit 10% plus. No other large state in India has such a track record of 10 years. Jobs, the lowest unemployment in India is in Gujarat. It's less than 1%. And these are none of these, by the way, are my statistics. These are all from public government statistics in the public domain. And more often than not, central government statistics by a government which is quite antagonistic to Mr. Modi. So really, I think it's a very good question. We'll have to bring out more information in public domain and improve our communication strategy. But I assure you, we'll focus to bring out to the people of India the excellent work that Mr. Modi has done in Gujarat, our other ministers and chief ministers have done in the rest of India, and also the work done at the center, where I think India saw one of the greatest surge, whether it was economically, whether it was in financial stability, whether it was in creation of jobs, whether it was in good governance and honest government, whether it was an engagement with our neighbors and providing India a solid foreign policy. I think in all respects, the performance of Mr. Vajpayee in the BJP-led NDA government is something we would love to emulate. something we have a lot of lessons to learn from, and something which I believe Mr. Modi will be able to build upon to take India to the next level, to in 10 years, to make us a real proud country, a country which in the Committee of Nations stands high, having eliminated poverty, having eliminated malnourishment, having eliminated corruption, giving the people of India a government that they can be proud of.
There are two set of questions coming in, Piyush. One is about the BJP's governance agenda, and the other are about the strategies in the next 3 or 4 months. So broadly, they can be clubbed under those two heads. Would you like to take the governance agenda first and then the strategies, or the other way?
Well, we'll address both the issues.
Great. So there are two questions which I would first pick up. One is from Ankit Garg, a volunteer in the India 272 Plus movement. And he asks, what will be BJP's top priority when it comes to power? And what if there is a fractured mandate?
Well, let me address the fractured mandate first, because that's something which a lot of people are concerned about. You know, in the last 20-25 elections all across the country, whether you take the 2009 Lok Sabha election, whether you take the state assembly elections in the last 5 years, where every state in India almost has gone to polls, we have seen that except the state of Jharkhand, which had a hung assembly, the people of India have given a very, very decisive verdict in favor of one or the other party. Look at the 2009 general election. Even after election was over, up to the date of counting, both the Congress and the BJP had coalitions around them, the NDA and the UPA, and we were both expecting the principal party to be in the range of 150 or 160 seats, and the coalitions to have a fair traction around 200-210 seats. And then there would have probably been some sort of cobbling together of a majority. But the people of India are wise. They chose to give one party, unfortunately it was not my party, but they chose to give one party 206 seats and their coalition an absolute majority. And we were reduced to 160 and our entire group was down to 175. But the people decided we don't want to have uncertainty. We want a stable government and veered around the coalition which they felt at that point of time could win the election and give a government a stable government. Look at the 29 states that have gone to polls in the last 5 years, and every state has gone to poll once. As I said, Jharkhand is the single state, it's a small state in the northeast of India, where there was a hung house. And we have seen the result of that. We've had political instability in Jharkhand. We've had no good government, no good governance. We tried to run a government also, but because of the nature of coalition, had our hands tied and were not able to deliver. Every other state, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, has given a decisive verdict. You will recall the recent elections. 80% of the seats to the BJP as an anti-incumbency in anger against the misgovernance of the Congress. Also, with the hope that with the Modi-led BJP and Vasundhara Raje as the Chief Minister of Rajasthan, they will get good governance, which we assure you, you will see in the coming months. They gave a pro-incumbency verdict in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, decisive verdicts. Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh was a surprise. People wanted to throw out the terrible government that the BSP gave them, but probably at that point did not see the BJP or the Congress being able to provide an alternate stable government. Despite being unhappy with the Samajwadi Party and its earlier government, and despite the fact that most pollsters thought that the Samajwadi Party will get about 150-160 seats out of 400, they actually landed up getting more than 230, an absolute majority, because people did not want instability. Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, across the country, we saw people giving decisive mandates, people giving a government a clear majority so that it can perform and it can be held to its performance. I think this election, the national election also, as we go closer towards the election, I see the people of India voting wisely, voting for a government which can deliver on its promises, voting for a government which is credible, which has a track record of good governance and performance. And in that respect, you will find going forward, already there is over a 60% rating, 56 to 60% rating nationally for Mr. Modi as the preferred choice as Prime Minister. I see that rating improving as we go closer to the election, as he unveils his vision for a strong and prosperous India, as he unveils his vision on international affairs, on security and safety, on so many other issues which are burning issues in India where people want a response.
Piyush, this is a suggestion, or this is a query rather, from Vikas Chaudhary, and it concerns an issue of national security, which we are all concerned about. And he says, sir, the kind of treatment Congress has shown towards our soldiers is insulting of humanity. How does BJP view this?
Well, the world only respects a person who is strong, a nation which is strong, a nation which is full of self-respect, and a nation which is led by a leadership which is willing to see eye to eye, willing to take up issues of such nature from a position of strength, not from a position of weakness. You will all recall it was Mr. Vajpayee who finally brought India into the nuclear world when he tested at Pokhran, and we became a nation which had nuclear capabilities, which was able to stand up and project itself as a strong nation. Unfortunately, in the last few years, we have seen the government come down on its knees on more than one occasion, whether it was in its engagement with Pakistan or any other neighbor in our neighborhood, even whether it was in its engagement with the United States or Europe. We saw a government which came out from a position of weakness. Save and except the last time around, when the government of India stood up on the diplomatic standoff recently on one of our officers, we have by and large found this government to be weak. And the world and the people do not want a weak leadership in India. I think Pakistan and other neighbors today have a situation where they cannot trust the Indian leadership because of the nature of policy flip-flop that we have seen even on international engagement by the leadership in India. You had a situation where a small city-state like Mali literally could take India head on an economic issue, on a small project that they were cancelling in their state. And the Indian government was helpless. We had soldiers being beheaded at the borders trying to protect the Indian shores, Indian territory. And the weak-kneed response that the Indian government gave actually encourages this kind of activities, whether it's state-sponsored terrorism across the border or whether it was even the governments across the borders engaging in these barbarous acts. I think at that point of time, the Indian government should have given a stronger response. Response does not necessarily mean war, as sometimes the Congress spokespersons used to talk, but response could be different levels of engagement. It could be diplomatic, it could be in terms of trade ties, it could be in terms of international pressure on the neighboring states not to engage in these kind of dastardly acts. I think there were many levels of engagement on which India could have given a sterner and stronger message, but we failed to display our strength at that particular moment.
I think the least that people can expect is the Indian External Affairs Minister does not compare Chinese incursions to a skin disorder. So anyway, moving over to the next topic, this is over the BJP's economic agenda. This is Arun Kamath, and his question is, what will be BJP's first steps to retain economy into normal, curb inflation and price rise?
Well, if you recall, while the NDA was in power, we were given an economy which was barely growing at 4%. We were given an economy which had double-digit inflation. We were given an economy where the state coffers were in dire straits. You had over 5% fiscal deficit. We had a huge current account deficit way back in 98 too. Mr. Vajpayee gave a very clear direction to the economy. What he showed us was that if we were to focus on strengthening the fiscal fundamentals of the economy, if we were to focus on ease of business and allow larger participation, both by the private sector and by the foreigners coming into India to invest, if we were to have the public sector more accountable in its performance, if we were to focus on the supply side rather than just try to attack inflation through fiscal or monetary policy, I think we could do a better job. And in 6 years, we saw the situation change. We saw a lot of reform happening across the board: financial reform, banking sector reform, reform in governance, leading to a country which was growing at over 8% when we laid down office. And prices were stable during these 6 years that we were in power, to the extent that consumer inflation was down to 3 or 4% by the time Mr. Vajpayee was firmly in the saddle. I think should we get a chance post May 2014, our focus will be on strengthening governance and strengthening the supply side. These will be the two major focuses which can impact prices. Let me give you a simple example. By increasing interest rates, we are not at all able to curb inflation for the last 6 years. We have seen interest rates almost double in the last 6 or 7 years that this government has been trying to tackle inflation. In that process, we have actually squeezed out supply, whereas the demand and the aspiration of people are obviously going to grow. So we have currently a situation of shortages in this country. We have a situation where people are not able to set up manufacturing, people are not able to expand production in this country because of the policies of the government, because of the restrictive approval processes that they have put in place, because of the policy flip-flop that we have seen. I think one of the major tasks before a new government will be to first bring confidence back into the economy. We need to see people investing in India. We need to see people trusting Government of India and its leadership, not to have a policy paralysis, not to have policy flip-flop. And in that respect, our track record, both in the center and in the states, has been one of stability, has been one where we make businesses flourish, businesses come easier, so that we can expand the supply base. And in my opinion, prices and price rise can only be controlled by expanding the supply side and not by squeezing out production and supply. This is not something which I am saying. It is something which the finance minister of independent India, the first finance minister, Mr. Chetty, said in the first budget speech way back in 47, when India became independent, and the finance minister was presenting his first budget. He had laid down the context that prices cannot be tackled, inflation cannot be tackled merely by monetary policy. It's the supply side that we need to do, we need to set right. And I think that is where we will focus on. We will ensure that essential products, essential goods are in adequate supply across the length and breadth of the country. New production, new manufacturing grows, jobs are created, and within that, good governance is the overlaying factor, where we will not allow hoarding like we saw in the recent crisis in onion, where despite a bumper crop and increasing production, we saw prices run away, go haywire, and the government almost helplessly watching the situation. I think a leader like Mr. Modi will be able to not only increase supply, but also give a clear message to the people that any nefarious activities or price rigging will not be tolerated. We have seen him in Gujarat, where he filed 100,000 police complaints and FIRs against power theft. And today we have a state which is almost completely having 24/7 power, but every home and every establishment has metered power, which has to be paid for, but at reasonable prices. But no freebies. People are happy because he believes free power equals no power. Similarly, on every aspect of supply, we'll have to expand the supply. I think people are happy to pay reasonable prices, and we can control inflation in that respect.
Okay. Piyush, there are lots and lots of suggestions and queries over the campaigning and strategies for the next 100 years or so. So we'll focus on that over the next 5 to 6 questions, because that's what is going to be most important in the next 100 days. This one is from Ankur, and he writes, "Sir, please ask Narendra Modi ji to do some rallies in non-Bangladeshi areas of West Bengal. There is huge support for Namo, but due to that region being a weak spot for BJP, people will go on voting for CPI because they are hating Mamata Banerjee now. Voting for CPI would be a big loss for Namo. So he suggests, please ask Narendra Modi ji to do some rallies in non-Bangladeshi areas of West Bengal."
Well, very good suggestion, and thank you very much for that. But let me assure you that Mr. Modi will be going to West Bengal. He'll be traveling and campaigning extensively in the non-traditional BJP areas. As regards West Bengal, I think they have planned a huge rally next month in Kolkata, which will then be taken to other areas of West Bengal also. Personally, if you ask me, I do not see the communists and the CPM really being able to build up traction in West Bengal. People have seen through their government. They ran government for several years. And my personal take on the situation there is that these kind of complete leftist thinking, which we saw with the communist-led regime in West Bengal, which we are now seeing somewhat in Delhi, where the government is literally talking Trotsky economics, They're talking of subsidizing almost everything, like power and water. They had made a promise that the people will decide food prices. I have yet to see how we can have food prices being decided in the kind of Janta Darbars that they held day before yesterday. We have yet to see how this government really is going to articulate its policies, but we do get the flavor of leftism in that. And I personally feel the people of India are not going to vote left. They are looking for progressive reform. They're looking for a government that can deliver on the economy and make India a self-sufficient and strong nation, not dependent on freebies. Similarly, in West Bengal, I think the BJP will be a force to reckon with going forward. We are going to put up good candidates across West Bengal, and I would urge friends in West Bengal to actively participate and send the message of Mr. Modi. It's not a question of non-Bangladeshi areas. I think across the length and breadth of West Bengal, people want a good government at the center, a strong leader, and I see the traction building up even in West Bengal and Kerala.
This is a query from Ajit Hota, and his suggestion is, can we have a shadow cabinet for Narendra Modi?
No, I think traditionally India does not have a system of shadow cabinets. But I can assure you, Mr. Modi is very clear in his mind about good governance, about the type of government he wants to run. He will pick up the best talent, both in and out of the party. He will build a team which can deliver on his promises. He will build a team which is honest. He will build a team with a good proven track record. And it's about 100 days into the election. The BJP is a party of collective leadership. We have a lot of very, very senior and experienced leaders, right from our mentor and senior leader, Mr. L.K. Advani, down across the spectrum, across the geography of India, across age groups, right down to the youth of India, which is engaging in a very large measure. And I'm sure Mr. Modi will have a lovely blend of experience, youth, new ideas, fresh thinkers, and build up a cabinet, build up a team which will deliver on his promises. He has done that in Gujarat, and I promise you he will do it at the center.
There are a couple of queries regarding possible inclusions in the party's election manifesto. This one is from Ravi Garg, and his query is there a chance that a plan for NRIs are also mentioned in the manifesto, voting rights for Indian citizen NRIs in respective embassies, let's say? Is there a possibility that voting rights for Indian citizen NRIs are also mentioned over here?
Well, I think this is a debate which has actually been initiated by Mr. Vajpayee when he was in government, that the Indian citizens who are living internationally should also be able to participate. You have a stake in our nation. You are concerned about what's happening in India. You contribute both through your remittances, through your knowledge, through the businesses you set up in India. And I think you are an integral part of India. We believe you are as much a part of all of us as any of us living in India. And the BJP we did initiate this thing. Unfortunately, over the last few years, it has remained in cold storage. Should Mr. Modi come into government, I'm sure he will look at this proposal very seriously. We'll try to find out a way in which this can be made robust, and we'll have to protect from misuse so that this cannot be misused in any manner, because you're living across the shore. While there is internet voting, but there are certain complications of protecting the secrecy of the vote, because we do have a secret ballot in India. We'll have to also address the issue of misuse of or debug the systems around such voting. But I assure you, we are very conscious that this is something we must look at very seriously. Of course, one can vote coming back to India and cast his vote, but that is, of course, very cumbersome as of today. We'll look at postal ballots or internet-based voting systems should we get into government.
A few of the participants have raised concerns over BJP's reach and performance in South Indian states. This one is from Patel Ashish Kumar, and his query is, what is the strategy to reach out to southern states, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra and Kerala?
Well, in Karnataka, we lost the government because of a divided house. Otherwise, there was no reason to lose the state government. But I think Karnataka this time around will give us good result in the Lok Sabha. And I'm finding when I travel to Karnataka, the enthusiasm is really huge around Mr. Modi. So I'm not particularly worried about the result in Karnataka. I still see BJP bettering the tally that it had in the last election. The bigger challenge for us is creating more traction in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. In Kerala, for example, I was hugely surprised at the response we got when we started the campaign there. We initiated a campaign for fund collection in Kerala. So my workers are going door to door across the length and breadth of Kerala, and they've, I think, covered about 18 districts so far. I tell you, the response is unbelievable. When they launched that campaign, I was kind of telling them, oh, you'll get a few million rupees. There'll hardly be much attraction for the BJP. But the response has completely exceeded my expectations. And I find that even in a city like Tiruvananthapuram, the local candidate, who is a sitting union minister, is a little unnerved that would there be a strong BJP candidate against him and whether he would have a problem. I'm actually finding that kind of traction even in a state like Kerala. So while I do appreciate that within a short span. We may not be able to get very huge results in terms of number of seats. We'll certainly create a lot of buzz around Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and I can see the vote share going significantly up, which will augur well going forward. In Andhra Pradesh, I think we have had a very consistent stand and a principled policy. We do believe Telangana should be made into a separate state, but it is very unfortunate the way this government has played politics with that state of Andhra Pradesh. I think it is despicable that they have split the people and the state with absolutely no planning, with absolutely no concern about the well-being of people on both parts of the state. They have not thought through the process properly. They have not taken the people into confidence just for some temporary electoral gain, which they hope to get. And I'm sure the wise people of Telangana and the rest of Andhra Pradesh, the Simandra, Rayalaseema, coastal regions, have all seen through the designs of the Congress and will certainly not give even one member of parliament to the Congress from that beautiful state. I see the Congress being wiped out of Andhra Pradesh this time around, and you will see the BJP picking up good seats in Andhra Pradesh, because we believe Telangana should be separated into a new state, but honorably done. The interests of all sections of society have to be protected. Every citizen of Andhra Pradesh should feel happy about that decision. The decision should lead to prosperity and progress of all geographical regions and all people of Andhra Pradesh. And I see that happening under the leadership of Mr. Modi, just like we saw 3 states being created: Uttarakhand, Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. While Mr. Vajpayee was Prime Minister in the NDA government, we saw these 3 states being created so seamlessly, so beautifully, without a murmur of dissent. All regions, all people were happy, and we have seen Bihar and Jharkhand both progress. We have seen Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh both progress. We have seen Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand all progress simultaneously. After the division of the state, I similarly foresee Andhra Pradesh giving good support to Mr. Modi, and Mr. Modi being able to deliver on a promise of a separate Telangana, but with both sections of Andhra Pradesh progressing and doing good work for the people of their state.
So as a policy, Piyush, does BJP support creation of smaller states in India?
I think we are now 67 years into independence. We have over these 67 years seen the creation of smaller states, for instance in Punjab, when Punjab and Haryana and Himachal Pradesh came out into smaller states. My own state, Maharashtra, came out of the Bombay presidency, and we now have Maharashtra and Gujarat. We have seen the 3 states I just referred to. I think there are a lot of lessons to learn over these years about the things that have happened in these states. Probably it may be a good idea to look at the national scenario, setting up a group of people, a group of experts or a commission which should explore this idea. It is not something where one can take a carte blanche view, whether smaller states are good or bigger states are good. I think what it requires is deep study, and the sentiment of the people has to be respected. The geographical and traditional and historical compulsions and let's say the lessons from history have to be taken more seriously, and then only can a view be taken. It cannot be a national one-size-fits-all formula. It will have to be a region by region decision which experts can look at and maybe come out with a vision on it.
Piyush, there are some critical suggestions coming in, and since this is a platform where we are addressing the larger concerns of BJP supporters, I think I would like to take a few of them. This one is from Thara Narasimhan, and her query is, Piyush, it is disheartening to see BJP spokespersons getting pillared on primetime news debates instead of being aggressive. Let the news channel not decide who has to be called. I suggest you guys have a team of leaders who should go to the news channels.
Well, I must compliment you, madam, for being so correct in your analysis that you hit the nail right on the head. Very good suggestion. I'll escalate it to my leaders, and I hope they will take it seriously. But as I reflect on it, I think it's an absolutely fabulous suggestion, and would help us to select the right spokesperson for the right debate. Thank you very much, man.
There is another critical suggestion coming in from Pranab Kumar Chaturvedi, and his suggestion is, this is more of a suggestion. He writes, we have to find solid answers for three weak points on corruption: Babu Bokaria, Solanki, and Yedurappa. That has been our weakest point in all our debates. Regarding AAP, we have to reconvert the educated illiterates.
I'm glad you've flagged out this issue, because this has been talked about quite often, and in fact, recently on a Times Now debate, they asked me the same thing. Unfortunately, at that point of time, I was, as the previous lady just mentioned, not given enough possibility to rebut it in detail, in the nature of the debate being a very short response. But let me just highlight to you what the reality on all these three issues is. First of all, I must tell you that the Gujarat allegations have been completely misrepresented by the media. As things stand, and I'm just trying to pick out the exact details so that I make out the exact picture for all the viewers and all the participants. The fact of life is that in both the cases, whether it's the Purushottam Solanki issue, the fishing controversy that erupted some time back, the fact is that as of today, there is no indictment, there's no court judgment against Mr. Solanki. It was a motivated campaign to discredit Mr. Solanki that was carried out by certain interested parties. The certain contracts were given out to fishermen in the interest of their ability to perform better, to be able to do their vocation and earn an honest living. A certain section of society tried to nail him, unfortunately without a shred of evidence. And when the governor decided to prosecute or to give an order overruling the cabinet and allowed the investigation to go on, the police investigated this for over 9 months. There was no evidence against Mr. Solanki. Ultimately, there is a probe which is still going on. Investigation is on. There is absolutely nothing against Mr. Solanki. There is no court indictment. It is a misrepresentation that has been a canard that has been spread for such a long time. So please don't get unnerved. Mr. Modi has zero tolerance for corruption, and there is nothing on which Mr. Modi can take action. Having said that, should something come out or emerge, Mr. Modi is the last man who will be found wanting, and he will certainly take any action if anybody is found to have indulged in any sort of activity which is not proper. Similarly, in the other issue, the Babubhai scam, I must bring to record the court at the lower level of judiciary passed an order against him, but the High Court not only struck down the order but also suspended the sentence. That is the critical difference between the other cases and this. Usually, if a court allows an appeal, the higher court allows an appeal or admits an appeal, we still believe that pending an appeal, the minister should possibly resign. In this particular case, evidence was so weak and the judgment was so poor that the High Court not only stayed the order but also suspended the sentence. Because of this, there is no sentence against the minister. Therefore, it is improper to cast aspersion on the minister or to take action against him. Somebody where the High Court the Superior Court has chosen to even suspend the sentence clearly points to the fact that the order itself or the judgment itself was erroneous, and therefore I think we let the court proceedings take place. As I said again earlier, if there is something which is found against him and an allegation is proven true, appropriate action will certainly be taken. As regards Mr. Yedurappa, I don't know if many of you are aware that the High Court had actually struck down the entire Lokayukta report and called it as unfortunate that the Lokayukta, the then Lokayukta, did not even give Mr. Yediyurappa an opportunity to be heard before passing strictures on an indictment. So the High Court had struck down the order of the Lokayukta. Despite that, Mr. Yediyurappa he laid down office. We in fact as a party lost a state government on the back of certain allegations which the court felt were very unfair to him, did not give him a chance to even speak his side of the story. And end of the day, he lost that state government. He has come back to the party. We have welcomed him. He has come back without any preconditions. He has come back without any post and said that I will not take any post till I am judicially acquitted. But even about the allegations, you'll be interested to know that after the Lokayukta order was quashed by the High Court, and I must read out to you, the High Court said that the petitioner was condemned unheard and there is flagrant violation of principles of natural justice. There is no fairness in the administrative action and the statutory provisions. So therefore the court had struck down the Lokayukta order. There are so many other parts of the judgment which maybe I will post onto the India 272 website, which will show to you how Mr. Yediyurappa has been very unfairly taken to task. There are several sections of the judgment which have indicted the earlier orders of the investigation. There is still some investigation going on in one or two cases. Several others he has been exonerated. We will wait for the final orders in those one or two pending cases. But broadly, today there is no conviction or nothing against Mr. Yediyurappa. He is still a very popular leader of Karnataka. The people were unhappy that he left the party. And on the public demand, he has come back to the party. We welcome him, and I think together and with a united party in Karnataka, we will once again give Mr. Modi a huge swing and upswing in the members that we elect from Karnataka for the BJP.
Another issue which seems to be concerning a lot of the people participating in today's discussion seems to be the issue of the selection of the right Lok Sabha candidates. Shantanu Shaligram writes, what will be your policy for selecting candidates for upcoming elections, looking at the party selection of clean image candidates from the challenging party? While Kapil Maheshwari has requested, please announce most of the candidates for Lok Sabha at the earliest.
Both are excellent suggestions and very rightfully pointed out. But I must tell you that the BJP and the Jan Sangh, the earlier avatar of the BJP, has consistently and always focused on clean image, good candidates. Sometimes there are cases against certain people which are political in nature. So let's say I was part of an agitation against corruption or against any illegal activity, or I was part of an agitation against price rise, and I'm booked in a case for having agitated or broken prohibitory orders, sometimes in enthusiasm even going a little step further and breaking the police barricade. A case gets registered against me. So very often when you see that, oh, there's a criminal case against a person X, you say, oh, he has a criminal background. I think what needs to be done is criminal background should be segregated into political cases of this nature and heinous crimes which are abhorrent. So certainly I can assure you, the BJP never has a single candidate, and in this election will have no candidate with a criminal background of nature which is either cheating or which is of a nature of a heinous crime, murder, rape, dacoity, or any of that. But having said that, if some of us have been, as political activists, have agitated for the right causes, and there are those cases pending, so please see carefully the background of each candidate and decide whether those cases are political in nature or otherwise. But having said that, I can assure you, we will give you excellent, educated, winning good candidates in every state, in every part of the country. And we'll certainly start announcing the candidates faster. I think we have our National Council on the 18th and 19th of January. Soon after that, we are planning to sit down with the lists recommended by different states to start deciding on the candidates, and we'll have lists coming out from early February onwards.
So on the issue of selection of candidates, in fact, we have an interesting suggestion from Narendra Kumar Singh. Narendra writes, Kejriwal must be dared to fight election against the First Lady IPS Officer, Mrs. Kiran Bedi. Will BJP do that? I think you know that post 18th or 19th or later as BJP starts finalizing its candidates. Piyush, there is another critical observation coming in from Anand Bhattar, and he says many BJP leaders, corporators, MLAs and MPs are inaccessible. Kindly create a mechanism where people can connect with the BJP leaders anytime with their problems or suggestions on the same lines that Modi ji has done. Can the technologies used by Modi ji be helpful in attaining this?
That's a very, very fair comment. I think I'll escalate this to the leaders. It's a very good point. For example, in Gujarat, we have extensively used the internet platforms to have Facebook accounts of all our members of parliament, all our MLAs. There is an engagement process with their representatives. I think in large parts of the nation, I'll draw some statistics and check it out. But I think in large parts of the country, we would have this kind of an engagement. Save and except the really interior areas, let's say of Chhattisgarh or some parts of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, where internet penetration is very low. But I'll certainly assure all the participants that after the election, we'll make sure every member of parliament is not only accessible through social media, will have his Facebook page and website, will be available for the people to air their grievances online, and we'll ensure under Modi ji's instructions and guidance that every elected representative is available at selected timings at particular places consistently through the year. A good measure or a good yardstick could be the fact that Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, all these places have re-elected BJP governments and re-elected several BJP representatives. So I do see that there will be a lot of good MPs and MLAs who are engaging very actively with their constituents. But if there is any shortcoming, we will take that into consideration while selecting candidates this time, and we'll certainly promise each and every one of you that our elected representatives will not only be available both online and offline, but will also be engaging and responding to people's problems very actively.
This query is from Sachin Chaudhary, and this concerns the educational reforms. His query is: what is your party policy for bringing in foreign universities in India, and for improving the engineering and medical institutes?
This has been an issue which is widely debated in Parliament, outside Parliament, on several forums. On the big picture, we believe in expanding quality education with and without support from international education institutions of repute. I mean, the BJP does not look at foreign universities as bad. We would like to welcome foreign universities to come to India. A number of universities got together and formed the Indian School of Business. And I remember that was also initiated when Mr. Vajpayee was in power. We believe there's a lot of scope for foreign universities to come to India, collaborate with Indian universities, but work within the framework of the Indian educational system. So we'll have to work together with the foreign universities to build up a robust system which respects and takes into account the Indian circumstances and Indian educational processes. You know, I've used this phrase earlier, there's never a one-size-fits-all. So we'll have to tailor-make the process of allowing foreign universities to come into India but respecting Indian tradition and Indian educational requirements. Similarly, for medical education and for hospitals and healthcare. Having said that, I believe Mr. Modi is going to shortly be unveiling our vision on medical education, on higher education, technical education, even primary education, even vocational training, skill development. He is articulating very shortly his vision, which will then be built upon in the vision document, in the manifesto that we come out. We believe it's very important not only to look at numbers, but also the quality of education. Our focus will be on strengthening both the enrollment and the fact that we should improve on the quality of education. We will use techniques, the electronic medium, the rapid expansion of internet penetration. We will use video conferencing and video dissemination of good teaching skills all across the nation, particularly the backward regions where good teachers do not go and impart education. So I think we will use technology and the robust infrastructure which is there in India, the good teachers that are available in India, to spread quality of education rather than just focus on numbers.
We have an interesting suggestion over here from Madhav Shelke, and he writes, the NDA government was possibly the best in Indian history. For upcoming elections, could election and regular meeting campaign slogans please be in national and regional languages instead of English? Like India Shining, he gives an example.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. English will not be the only medium on which we will be putting out our vision, putting out our campaign. It will be in all regional languages, I assure you. I like this suggestion. I'll also see if our website and our India 272 platform can start engaging in regional languages also. It may be a little time consuming to get that sorted out in a very short span. But in terms of the actual campaign, both the media campaign, the hoardings, the print advertisements, the engagement on television, we'll expand our regional language engagement.
This query is from Himanshu Shukla, and it's about the reported, it's about reports that BJP might be considering abolishing income tax. And he writes, we have seen many news items in media for abolition of income tax and new banking transaction tax. Is that, if BJP considers that seriously, that's his query. And initial analysis does show that this is a good idea to control black money and increasing existing tax base. So his query basically is, what does the party take on it?
Well, this was a suggestion that has been initiated by certain well-meaning persons. It was brought to the Bharatiya Janata Party. We have started the process of studying it, but we find that there are a number of unanswered questions in this suggestion. And it's still, if you ask me, a work in progress. So it will need to be studied in greater detail. We'll have to explore the practical feasibility of several aspects that come out of this suggestion. It needs to be really explored and studied in greater detail before any decision can be taken on it. But I can assure you the Bharatiya Janata Party is both open to ideas. We welcome new suggestions. In fact, we crowdsourced new ideas and new suggestions. And I suspect we got over 22 or 25,000 responses from all over the world in terms of new ideas. And a whole team is working and studying each one of these ideas for its practical feasibility and the best interests of the people. Similarly, this is one such idea which came out. Our principal focus is that taxation and tax structure should be simplified, should be rationalized, should be made more amenable to compliance by better tax administration. The harassment of the people is what people are more angry about. And the tax structure should be at such levels that people do not mind paying that tax. And on that tax, they hope to get good government and good governance. That is what the BJP philosophy is: simplification, rationalization, and better administration. Within those guiding principles, we will work out a good model which will provide the people relief both from high taxes and from harassment. But this particular proposal is still work in progress. It's a suggestion which still needs to be thought through fully. We cannot accept or reject it on the face of it. As a responsible political party, we are open to ideas, but we'll accept them and finally throw them as our vision, put them out as our vision in public domain once we are completely satisfied that it is robust and it can be implemented.
Piyush, there are a few queries coming in about electoral arithmetic. The first is from Rahul Agarwal, and his query is what is BJP's strategy in the key states of UP, bigger states of UP, Bihar, and Maharashtra, and what is the tally that we are looking at?
Well, as is evident from the platform on which we are doing this dialogue, it's India 272 dialogue. And clearly, we are not in this election for anything less than 272. We are working day and night, let me assure you. All of us in the party and the NDA alliance across the country are committed to give India a stable government with 272, an absolute majority plus. Towards that end, every state has its own strategy. Every state, our workers, and millions of volunteers who have nothing to do with the party, who are not members of the party, but want to see Mr. Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister, are engaging in the campaign both online and offline. In Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, people have tested every government. They have seen governments come and go at the center. Overall, they are looking at Mr. Modi as the central figure around which a good new government can come in Delhi. I just mentioned to you about the historical perspective, where in the past elections people have voted for a stable government at the center and a decisive leader. I think the people of Bihar and UP are also looking for a good government, a stable government. And from whatever feedback we are getting on the ground, should this campaign sustain effectively over the next 120 days, for which I am appealing to all of you to also participate actively all through the length and breadth of the country. I am confident that we will get over 45 or 50 seats in Uttar Pradesh and at least 25 seats in Bihar as a part of the national campaign, taking us past the 272 figure. End of the day, elections are not about math, it's about sentiment. And as I'm seeing this election, it's turning out more and more to be a wave election rather than pure mathematics.
This one is an interesting query from Kokila Shah, and she writes, which are the crucial seats where NRIs can come and campaign in India to make a difference and remain resourceful in that area with other volunteers or active people in the specific constituencies?
Well, I think each one can play a role across the geography of India. Having said that, the urban centers would probably be the cities or city related constituencies, which are about 160 number in India now, are areas where you will find a lot of NRI contacts, a lot of people that the NRIs would know in these urban areas. A lot of people, NRIs would have come out of these areas and gone internationally. So I think a deep dive focus in these 160 urban areas, particularly in cities which are outside our traditional strongholds of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan. So let's say in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, there could be a lot of potential that the NRIs could do. Maharashtra, there's a lot of potential of NRIs coming and engaging. Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal and Kerala are three areas where the NRIs have a lot of traction, have a lot of relationships which they should come and talk to and build up the support base for Mr. Modi and the BJP. But at the macro level, I think every part of India will be influenced by NRIs. can be influenced by NRIs. And I would urge all of you to take this up as a mission and join us in Mission India 272 to actively participate online and offline if you're coming down to India in your local areas or spheres of influence, and look at expanding the voting people coming out to vote and voting for the Bharatiya Janata Party and its alliance candidates. It may not happen that people love Modi, people want Modi, people want the BJP, people want the lotus to shine, people want the lotus, our election symbol, to come out of this mess that the country is in today and emerge as the hope and the agent of change in India. But let that hope not remain in the mind and heart. Let it come out on voting day in actually translating in more and more votes being cast to make Mr. Modi the Prime Minister.
Another query from Manoj R, which again concerns the electoral arithmetic of reaching 272 and beyond. So, what is the status on BJP's overall strategic three-pole alliance with regional parties as
well? Gentlemen, we respect the fact that India is a federal country. We have states which have regional parties which are very strong. But I assure you that the BJP is not looking at unholy alliances. We are not looking at alliance partners who do not subscribe to our philosophy and our theories of good governance, of progress, of economic growth, of jobs for the people of India, efforts to meet the aspirations of young India, our intention to protect the dignity and sanctity of women, to provide them good education, good sanitation, as Modi ji said in one of his interactions. One of the biggest problems which has to be addressed and to which he is committed is the poor state of sanitation, particularly for women, and safety and security of women in India. Also, we need to create more and more jobs for the young population, both men and women, all across the nation. We need to do the skill development of people. I think these are the large agenda items that the BJP will work on, and we will be looking for like-minded parties to align with us, who also have a vision of a prosperous and strong and a nationally secure India. And in that respect, we are open to alliances. We have not yet closed discussions. There are many channels working with different state and regional parties, and you may hear about some of them in the days to come.
It's been a very exciting last 100 minutes chatting with you all, and we'll soon be winding up. Before that, before we have another couple of last queries for Piyush, I would quickly like to reiterate the pledge which has been sent by one of the supporters of BJP, one of the strong supporters of BJP, and which ideally should be taken up by all of you, who are participating in this campaign. And the pledge reads, I pledge my support to Namo as PM of India. Namo has demonstrated his ability to deliver good governance and ensure prosperity of each and every citizen in the state of Gujarat.
I think these pledges are available on the link.
They are
available on India272.com. I would urge you to go onto that, register as a volunteer on India272.com so we can engage with you. A lot of your queries will get answered if you go deeper into the 272 website. We'll put in some FAQs. I believe looking at these questions, we'll try and drop some FAQs and respond to them on that website also. But I would urge all of you to go onto that pledge and let us know how many of you and which of you are wanting to work for Mr. Modi and to be a part of this Mission 272 to give India a strong and stable government.
Piyush, would you like to take one last query? And then
Sure.
This again concerns BJP's governance agenda, and this one is from Neha Aks and also from another participant. Is the BJP serious about disinvestment of Indian Railways? What would be your plan on that?
See, very often this disinvestment question comes up. Of course, my party's track record from 98 to 2004 demonstrates our willingness and our ability to disinvest loss-making companies in that period, and also to work on privatization or expanding the role of the private sector in different sections of national development and infrastructure development. Having said that, look at what Mr. Modi did in Gujarat. He had a broken power system. The discoms were in a mess. The loss of his electricity utility companies was over 2,500 crores 12 years ago when he took over office. By sheer good governance, by sheer management principles which he implemented in those electricity companies, by focus on eliminating power theft, eliminating transmission and distribution losses, expanding the supply of power, and bringing in efficiencies and economies of scale, he has been able to convert them to a profit of 500 crores last year. So I think it's not only privatization that is the agenda of the day. You need a robust policy where you can even improve the public sector through better governance. And there may be certain sectors which are best left to the private sector. So for example, why should government be running airlines and hotels and in many cases people would ask even railways? But it does not mean that government has to completely get out of each of these sectors. So maybe a more robust model could be that the Indian railways are made more efficient. We focus on improving their efficiency, while at the same time allowing the private sector to participate more actively, using this existing infrastructure to run trains, improving the amenities provided in the railway network, increasing the freight availability by private sector participation, bringing out a high-speed train network in the country, which can actually bring in better connectivity all across the length and breadth. So I think a robust mix of government, public sector, and really eliminate inefficiency and corruption and bring in more competition and better future for the people of India. Wrap up.
Thanks everybody for participating in this. I think Piyush was as inspiring as ever. I have always found him to be very inspiring, and I'm sure these last 2 hours these last 2 hours which he has utilized to clear many of your doubts and clarifications would inspire you to go all out and do your best in the next 100 days. This is a critical time in the history of the country. And as an individual, as a professional writer, I have taken the pledge that I'm going to dedicate the next 100 days to make sure that Modi ji becomes the Prime Minister, because frankly, anybody who understands electoral politics in India knows that neither the AAP nor Congress is in a position to get more than 100 seats each right now. The sole objective is to make sure that Modi ji does not become the Prime Minister. But unfortunately, what they don't realize, or probably what they realize and they are not bothered about, is that AAP, which made such tall claims about being in politics for public service, is already showing clear signs of opportunism, is already showing clear signs of greed. All they want is power, which is not BJP has ever striven for. I think in national interests, it becomes all the more imperative at this stage for all of us to make sure that we go all out and make sure that BJP comes to power and Modi ji heads the next government. Thank you so much, Piyush ji.
I'll just conclude by a couple of small comments. In my own interactions with Mr. Modi, I have found him to be a very sensitive person and a person who deeply feels from within for the poor people of India, for the new middle class, the emerging middle class, for the youth and women of India. A person with a very sensitive passion to do something for the nation. I mean, for him it has never been about being Prime Minister or Chief Minister or in power or out of power. After all, he rises from being a chaiwala or serving tea to the passengers in the railway trains or at the highways in Gujarat, and has over the years dedicated his entire life for the service of the nation. He was not born with a silver spoon. He did not have privileges of very high education, whether in India or internationally. He's not gone to business schools in America or been a part of the very intellectual schools and universities in Britain. But with his rustic knowledge of at the ground level, on the ground, with his rustic and personal experiences, which he has himself lived through, he understands what poverty is. He understands what a job means to a young man. He understands what happens when a person passes out of college but is unemployed. He understands the pain of the middle class when prices are spiraling and budgets are going haywire. He understands the angst of a common man who had to go to an income tax office or to the local talati and maybe deal with a matter there or get a birth or a death certificate in his family. I think that understanding, that compassion that came out of his own personal experiences, of his own life's experiences, a life where he gave up even the pleasures of a family life to serve the nation, where he gave up his own personal ambitions to be able to serve the people. I think that is what makes Mr. Modi complete. The other day we had a India 272 dialogue with volunteers from across India in Delhi on 9th January when we launched this dialogue series. And one of the participants asked him, हमें क्या बनना चाहिए? And also asked him, आप क्या बनना चाहते हो? And I tell you, his response was so personal, was so human. He said, बेटा, हमें कुछ बनने के लिए नहीं बाहर आना चाहिए, हमें कुछ करने के लिए आना चाहिए. अगर हम समाज में उतरे हैं, समाज सेवा में उतरे हैं, राजनीति में उतरे हैं, तो कुछ बनने के लिए नहीं उतरे हैं, हम कुछ करने के लिए उतरे हैं. We have to give back to society. We have to participate in public life, whether in politics or otherwise, to give back to society. And I think Mr. Modi is that leader who inspires all of us to give back to society, to work for a future for the 1.2 billion Indians who I hope will give him an opportunity to lead India into the superpower status that we rightfully deserve. And I would appeal to all of you, and I would begin to end with you. I would appeal to you. I know you are independent. I know your intellectual abilities. I have read your books. I have found in you that passion to give back to the nation. I would appeal to you, come out of the background, come in the front, join the party, join this movement, be a part of this movement openly and actively, because we don't want instability in this country. We want a strong, stable government led by a visionary, honest leader. And today, Mr. Narendra Modi represents that stability, that integrity, that vision, which can only take India forward. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for all the questions all of you have asked. I may not have been able to, I can see sheets of paper here. We may not be able to respond to all the queries in one dialogue, but I assure you we'll have a series of dialogues going forward. But trust Mr. Modi, trust the innate goodness of India and Indians, be a part of this whole campaign, and be a part of the future of India. I think all of you will be agents of change in this process. We will have more dialogues with other leaders of the party, and I'm going to request Shri Narendra Modi to also join us in our India 272 dialogues going forward, to engage with all of you and meet all of you in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Shri, for taking time out from your schedule. And
It's been a privilege. I've really enjoyed it.
Please bust the myth of Aam Aadmi. Everybody who's concerned for the country, you people sitting in the US and chatting with us over the next election, I think you are the quintessential Aam Aadmi. So I think at the bottom of, I think the most essential part of being an Aam Aadmi is to be a nationalist, and national interests demand that Modi ji become the next Prime Minister. Thank you so much.
Thank you.